What if I told you that in 1816, the United States military fired a superheated cannonball into a fortress full of freed black people and blew 270 men, women, and children into pieces so small their families couldn't identify the remains? What if I told you the explosion was so massive it shook the earth 100 miles away? What if I told you this was America's first military airstrike on its own soil, and the target wasn't enemy soldiers, but black families who dared to live without chains? July 27, 1816, 5 o'clock in the morning, Prospect Bluff, Florida. The sun hasn't risen yet, but Garcon isn't sleeping. He's standing on the wall of Negro Fort, watching two American gunboats creep up the Apalachicola River through the morning mist. Behind him, inside the fortress walls, 300 people are sleeping. Mothers and babies, elderly men and women, young warriors. Most of them are black, freed from slavery, armed with British rifles, living on Spanish land, refusing to go back to the plantations in Georgia. Garcon is their commander. He's a black man of French descent, possibly from Haiti, possibly from Louisiana. History didn't preserve much about him except this: he refused to surrender. 2 days ago, American forces and their Creek Indian allies surrounded the fort and demanded he give up. Garcon's response was clear. He would sink any American vessel that tried to pass. He would blow up the fort himself before he let them take it. He would die free or not at all. Now the American gunboats are in range. Garcon can see the cannon crews preparing. He knows what's coming. Inside the fort, in the center of the parade ground, sits the powder magazine. Barrels and barrels of gunpowder. Enough ammunition to fight off any attack. Enough explosive power to level the entire fortress if it's hit directly. The first cannon fires, a regular iron ball. It flies over the fort and splashes into the river behind them. The second cannon fires. Another miss. Then the Americans load something different, a hot shot. A cannonball heated red hot in the ship's oven. The kind of ammunition designed to set wooden ships on fire. The kind that glows like a demon's eye as it flies through the air. The cannon roars. The hot shot arcs through the dawn sky. It clears the fortress wall. It drops. And it lands directly in the powder magazine. The explosion is beyond description. The entire fort disappears in a column of fire and smoke that rises hundreds of feet into the air. The blast wave flattens trees a quarter-mile away. The sound travels across swamps and forests and reaches Pensacola 100 miles to the west, where people stop in the streets and wonder if it's an earthquake or the end of the world. Inside the fort, 270 human beings cease to exist in a single instant. Bodies are blown to atoms. Limbs and flesh rain down across the river. The wooden walls are splinters. The British cannons, each weighing thousands of pounds, are thrown like toys. The earth itself is scarred with a crater. When the smoke clears, only 30 people are still alive. Most of them are horribly wounded, burned, missing limbs. Garcon survives. So does a Choctaw chief who had joined the defense. But survival means capture. Creek warriors fighting alongside the Americans rush into the smoking ruins. They find Garcon's wife. They beat her to death. They drag Garcon and the chief out of the wreckage. The Americans watch. Lieutenant Colonel Duncan Clinch, the commanding officer, writes in his report that the explosion was tremendous, heard distinctly at a great distance, and that the carnage was dreadful. Garcon is executed. Some accounts say he was shot. Others say hanged. Either way, he's killed on Andrew Jackson's orders. The surviving black people, the ones who lived through the explosion, are re-enslaved. They're distributed among the Creek warriors as spoils of war, or sent back to the Georgia plantations they had escaped from, or taken to Andrew Jackson's own plantation in Tennessee to work his fields. This was the Negro Fort Massacre, and for 208 years, it's been erased from American history books. Until now, this is the story they buried. This is your stolen history. And after you hear it, you'll never see America the same way again. Everything you learned about American history was sanitized. They taught you about the Revolutionary War and the Constitution and Manifest Destiny. They taught you slavery ended in 1865 and everyone lived happily ever after. They never taught you about the black people who escaped slavery decades earlier and built armed fortresses. They never taught you about the massacres. They never taught you that the US military was used to hunt down freed black people and blow them up with artillery. This isn't ancient history. This happened 208 years ago. Your great-great-great-grandparents were alive when this happened. The children who survived this massacre had children who had children who had children who are alive today. This erasure happened in your lifetime. After this video, you'll understand why Andrew Jackson became president after committing genocide. You'll understand why the military has always been used to protect slave property, not black lives. You'll understand why every time black people built something, they destroyed it. And you'll understand that the pattern didn't stop in 1816. It's still happening now. By the end of this video, you'll know why 1,000 freed black people and their native allies built the most heavily armed fortress in North America, and why America had to destroy it to preserve slavery. You'll know how the explosion at Negro Fort was Andrew Jackson's rehearsal for stealing Florida and exterminating the Seminoles. You'll know why this massacre proves the military was never created to protect you, it was created to re-enslave you. And you'll never see US military propaganda the same way again. This isn't just history. This explains why your family rents instead of owns. Why black communities have no wealth. Why the wealth gap exists. They didn't just enslave your ancestors. They hunted down the ones who escaped. They bombed them. They erased the evidence. They made sure you'd never know that your ancestors built free black republics on American soil. If your grandmother ever said, "They'll never let us have nothing," she was talking about Negro Fort. If your grandfather ever said, "The government ain't never been on our side," he was channeling the memory of Garcon standing on those walls, watching the cannonball fall. This is your history. This affects your life today. Let's begin. To understand Negro Fort, you have to understand what was happening in 1814. The War of 1812 was ending. America had been fighting Britain for 2 years over trade disputes and territorial expansion. The war hadn't gone well for America. The British had burned Washington, D.C. American forces had suffered humiliating defeats. The British were looking for ways to pressure America in the South, so they came to Florida. Florida at that time belonged to Spain, not the United States. Spain was weak. They couldn't defend their territory. The British knew this. They also knew that thousands of enslaved black people in Georgia and the Carolinas were desperate for freedom. They knew that the Creek Indian Nation had just been crushed by Andrew Jackson in the Creek War, and that the survivors called Red Stick Creeks wanted revenge. The British made an offer. Fight with us against the Americans, and we'll give you freedom and land. For black people enslaved on plantations, this was a golden ticket. This was a chance to escape and never be caught. This was a chance to take up arms and fight the people who had enslaved them. In November 1814, Colonel Edward Nichols of the British Royal Marines arrived at Prospect Bluff, 15 miles up the Apalachicola River from the Gulf of Mexico. It was a perfect location. The river was deep enough for ships to navigate. The bluff was high ground, easy to defend. The surrounding land was fertile for farming. Nichols ordered the construction of a fort, but this wasn't just any fort. This was a military stronghold designed to withstand siege. The walls were thick earthworks reinforced with timber. The interior had barracks, a parade ground, and storage buildings. And the British filled it with weapons. 3,000 muskets, 1,000 carbines, 400 pistols, 500 swords, heavy artillery cannons that could sink ships, barrels of gunpowder and lead shot. Enough firepower to arm a small army. The British called for recruits. Enslaved black people in Georgia heard about it through the underground network, the Whisper system, that connected plantations across the South. They ran. They fled through swamps and forests, dodging slave patrols traveling by night, following the North Star south into Florida. By December 1814, hundreds had arrived. Creek warriors came too. So did Seminoles and Miccosukees. By the end of the year, 3,500 warriors were training at Prospect Bluff. Think about what this meant. 3,500 armed black and native fighters on the doorstep of Georgia. 3,500 people who had every reason to hate the American plantation system. 3,500 people with British military training and British weapons. This was the worst nightmare of every slave owner in the South, but the British didn't stay. In March 1815, the Treaty of Ghent ended the War of 1812. The British withdrew from Florida. They sailed back to Jamaica and then to England. But here's the crucial part. They left the weapons behind. They left the fort intact. They left the cannons and the gunpowder and the 3,000 muskets. And they told the black fighters, "This is yours now. Defend it. Live free." Most of the Creek warriors left. They went back to their villages. But the black people stayed. They had nowhere else to go. Going back north meant re-enslavement. Staying meant freedom. So they stayed. They turned the military fort into a community. They brought their families. They cleared land and planted crops. They fished in the river and hunted in the forests. And they kept the weapons ready because they knew the slave owners in Georgia would come for them eventually. The fort became known as Negro Fort. Some historians estimate 800 people lived there. Others say closer to 1,000. Most were black, formerly enslaved. Some were black Seminoles, people of mixed African and Native heritage, who had been living in Florida for decades. A few were Native warriors, who had married into black families. The population was mostly women, children, and elderly. The men were farmers and fishermen, not professional soldiers. But every man knew how to load and fire a musket. They had to. Their freedom depended on it. Negro Fort became a symbol. Across the South, enslaved black people whispered about it. There's a place where our people are free. There's a place where they have guns. There's a place where they'll never take you back. It was a beacon of hope. It was proof that black people could live without masters. It was proof that armed self-defense worked. And that's exactly why it had to be destroyed. Andrew Jackson hated Negro Fort. Not just disliked, not just opposed. Hated it with a fury that consumed him. And you need to understand why, because this wasn't about military strategy. This was about money. This was about power. This was about preserving the entire economic system of the South. Jackson was a slave owner. He owned over 160 enslaved people on his plantation, the Hermitage in Tennessee. He bought and sold human beings for profit. He whipped people who tried to escape. He hunted runaways with dogs. He believed in slavery, not just as an economic system, but as a racial hierarchy ordained by God. Black people in his worldview were property. Property that worked. Property that produced cotton and tobacco and wealth. Negro Fort was a direct threat to that worldview. Every day that Fort stood, it proved that black people could be free-armed and self-sufficient. Every day, it stood more enslaved people in Georgia heard about it and started planning their escape. Plantation owners were losing property. They were losing labor. They were losing money. In 1815 and 1816, slaveholders in Georgia flooded Jackson with letters. They demanded action. They said Negro Fort was a den of thieves and murderers. They said it was encouraging slave rebellion. They said it was destabilizing the entire region. What they meant was, we're losing our slaves, and we want them back. Jackson wrote to the Spanish governor of Florida. He said the fort was a threat to peace. He said it was full of outlaws and must be destroyed. The Spanish governor replied that he didn't have enough troops to do anything about it. Spain was weak. Florida was a backwater territory they could barely control. Jackson saw his opportunity. In May 1816, Jackson ordered Major General Edmund P. Gaines to destroy Negro Fort. He didn't ask Spain's permission. He didn't care that Florida was Spanish territory. He didn't care about international law. He wanted the fort destroyed, and the black people inside either killed or re-enslaved. Jackson's written orders are preserved in the National Archives. He called Negro Fort a den of brigands. He said it was manned by upwards of 250 Negroes, and that it must be reduced. Reduced. Not captured. Not negotiated with. Reduced. Destroyed. Jackson also wrote to Secretary of War John Quincy Adams. Adams, who would later become president, fully supported the mission. He told Jackson to proceed. The official justification was that Negro Fort threatened American supply lines on the Apalachicola River. American forces were building Fort Scott at the junction of the Flint and Chattahoochee rivers, and they needed to transport supplies by boat. Negro Fort controlled the river. Therefore, it had to go. But that was a lie. The real reason was slavery. Negro Fort had to be destroyed because it proved black people didn't need white people to survive. It proved that given weapons and land, black people could defend themselves and thrive. That truth was more dangerous than any army. Jackson sent 2 gunboats up the Apalachicola River. They were under the command of Sailing Master Jarius Loomis. He also sent a land force of soldiers and Creek warriors under Lieutenant Colonel Duncan Clinch. The Creek warriors were crucial. These were Creeks who had sided with the Americans during the Creek War. Jackson had promised them land and plunder if they helped destroy the Red Sticks and their black allies. Now he was calling in that debt. He promised them that any black people captured at Negro Fort could be kept as slaves. That was the incentive. Help us destroy the fort, and you can enslave the survivors. By early July 1816, American forces surrounded Negro Fort. The 2 gunboats blocked the river. Clinch's troops and 500 Creek warriors blocked the land approaches. The people inside the fort were trapped. On July 10th, the fort's garrison fired on the American gunboats. The shots missed. This gave the Americans the excuse they needed. They claimed the fort had fired, first making this a defensive action. It was a setup. They had invaded Spanish territory, surrounded a community of freed black people, and when those people defended themselves, the Americans called it aggression. Over the next 2 weeks, there were skirmishes. American forces tried to probe the fort's defenses. The defenders fired back. Both sides took casualties. On July 23rd, the Americans sent a message demanding surrender. Garçon refused. He sent back a defiant message. He said he would sink any vessel that tried to pass. He said he would blow up the fort himself before he surrendered. He knew what surrender meant. It meant chains. It meant the auction block. It meant his wife and children would be sold to the highest bidder. He chose to fight. On the morning of July 27th, the Americans decided to use hot shot. A hot shot is a cannonball heated until it glows red. You load it carefully so it doesn't ignite the gunpowder in your own cannon. When it hits a wooden target, it starts a fire. The Americans had been using hot shot to try to set the fort's wooden buildings ablaze, but so far they'd missed. At 5 in the morning, the gunboat fired. The hot shot flew through the air glowing like a small sun. It cleared the fort wall. And by a chance, that the American commander later called providential, it dropped directly into the powder magazine. The explosion was instantaneous. One eyewitness said it was as if the earth had opened up. The fort vanished in fire and smoke. The blast threw debris thousands of feet into the air. Cannons weighing a ton each were flung like pebbles. The wooden palisades disintegrated. The earthwork walls collapsed. And every human being inside the fort was either killed instantly or horribly maimed. Lieutenant Colonel Clinch wrote in his official report that the explosion shook the earth at a distance of 9 miles. Another report said it was heard distinctly in Pensacola, 100 miles away. Clinch described the scene as horrible beyond description. He said the bodies were mutilated in the most shocking manner. He said many were blown to atoms, meaning they were literally vaporized. 270 people died. Most were women and children. Think about that. This wasn't a battle between armies. This was a civilian community, and America used military artillery to annihilate them. Mothers holding babies. Grandparents who had escaped slavery decades ago and thought they were finally safe. Children who had been born free in the fort and had never known chains. All of them gone in a second. 30 people survived. Most were critically wounded. Burns covered their bodies. They had lost limbs in the blast. They were in shock, barely able to comprehend what had happened. The Creek warriors rushed into the smoking ruins and began looting. They took whatever valuables they could find. Then they rounded up the survivors. Garcon was among the survivors. So was a Choctaw chief who had been visiting the fort. They were both wounded, but alive. Garcon's wife had also survived the blast, but the Creek warriors killed her. They beat her to death in front of Garcon. Why? Because she had resisted. Because she had fought back. Because they could. Garcon and the chief were taken to Jackson. What happened next depends on which account you read. Some say Jackson ordered them both executed by firing squad. Others say they were hanged. Either way, they were killed. Garcon, the man who had refused to surrender, who had chosen death over chains, was executed by the United States military. The other survivors were divided up as spoils. Some were given to the Creek warriors to be enslaved. Others were sent back to the Georgia plantations they had escaped from. A few were taken to Jackson's own plantation in Tennessee. The man who ordered their fort destroyed, who caused the deaths of 270 people, enslaved the survivors and forced them to work his fields. No one was held accountable. No one was prosecuted. No court-martial was convened. Clinch was praised for his success. Jackson was celebrated as a hero who had eliminated a threat to American security. Secretary of War John Quincy Adams wrote a letter defending the attack. He said Negro Fort had been a haven for runaway slaves and hostile Indians, a threat to the peace and security of the United States. He said the explosion was unfortunate, but necessary. The official military reports barely mentioned the civilian casualties. They focused on the destruction of the fort and the capture of weapons, the 3,000 muskets, the cannons, the gunpowder. The reports read like inventories of captured property. The human beings who died were footnotes. And here's what you need to understand. This wasn't a tragic accident. This wasn't collateral damage in a legitimate military operation. This was a massacre. This was genocide. This was the United States government using its military to hunt down freed black people and either kill them or re-enslave them. And it was legal. It was policy. It was the system working exactly as designed. Negro Fort was erased. Within months, the ruins were cleared. In 1818, the U.S. Army built a new fort on the same site. They called it Fort Gadsden, after James Gadsden, an officer who had fought in the Seminole Wars. The name Negro Fort disappeared from official records. The story disappeared from newspapers. The victims disappeared from history. By the time your grandparents were in school, no one was teaching this. By the time you were in school, it had been buried for over a century and a half. But the survivors remembered. The Black Seminoles remembered. They passed the story down through generations. They told their children, and their children told their children. The U.S. government tried to erase Negro Fort from history, but the people who lived it kept it alive in whispers and family stories. And now, 208 years later, the truth is coming back to the surface. This is the story they don't want you to know. This is your stolen inheritance. And it gets worse. Because Negro Fort wasn't an isolated incident. It was the beginning of a pattern of destroying every free black community in America. A pattern that would repeat again and again and again for the next 150 years. Hold on, because what I'm about to show you next will prove this wasn't a one-time tragedy. This was systematic. This was policy. This was genocide by design. Negro Fort wasn't isolated. Every time black people built a free community, America destroyed it. Every single time. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't a series of unfortunate accidents. This was policy. This was systematic elimination of black freedom. And I can prove it. The same man who destroyed Negro Fort didn't stop there. Andrew Jackson had tasted blood. He had shown that the U.S. military could invade foreign territory, massacre black people, and face zero consequences. In fact, he'd been rewarded, praised, celebrated. So he did it again, and again, and again. 1817. 1 year after Negro Fort. Jackson was now Major General of the Southern Division of the U.S. Army. Seminole and Black Seminole communities still existed throughout northern Florida. They were farming, trading, living free. Slave owners in Georgia were still losing property to runaways who fled south. Jackson decided to finish what he started. He called it pacification. He called it securing the border. What it really was ethnic cleansing. The First Seminole War began in November 1817 and lasted until May 1818. Jackson led U.S. forces deep into Spanish Florida, without permission from Spain, without a declaration of war from Congress, without legal authority of any kind. He just invaded. His targets were Seminole villages and Black Seminole settlements, places where families lived, places where children played and elders taught, and women planted crops. Jackson's forces burned them all. The village of Foultown, the villages along the Suwannee River. Dozens of settlements wiped off the map. Hundreds of people killed. Hundreds more captured and enslaved. Jackson didn't distinguish between Seminoles and Black Seminoles. To him, they were all threats to the slave system. The Seminoles harbored runaways. They treated black people as equals, even as family. Seminole chiefs married black women. Black men fought alongside Seminole warriors. This kind of racial mixing, this kind of equality was intolerable to Jackson. It had to be destroyed. The First Seminole War killed hundreds of Seminoles and Black Seminoles. Exact numbers don't exist because Jackson's forces didn't keep careful records of Native and Black casualties. Why would they? These weren't considered human beings worth counting. But we know from Spanish reports that entire villages were depopulated. We know from survivor accounts that families were torn apart. We know that the free black communities that had existed in northern Florida for decades were annihilated. And here's the kicker. Jackson's invasion forced Spain's hand. Spain couldn't defend Florida. They were a declining empire, broke and overstretched. Jackson had just proven that America could take Florida whenever it wanted. So in 1819, Spain sold Florida to the United States for $5 million. They called it the Adams-Onis Treaty. What it really was Spain giving up territory they'd already lost to American military aggression. Andrew Jackson became the first governor of Florida Territory in 1821. Think about that. The man who had massacred hundreds of black and native people in Florida, who had burned their homes and enslaved their children, was rewarded with governorship. And then in 1828, he was elected President of the United States. He served 2 terms. His face is on the $20 bill. The man who ordered the bombing of Negro Fort, who caused the deaths of 270 people, is honored on American currency. But Jackson wasn't done with the Black Seminoles. Not even close. because thousands had escaped deeper into Florida. They fled to the Everglades, to the swamps and hammocks of central and southern Florida, where American troops couldn't easily follow. They rebuilt. They survived. And for 15 years, they lived in a tense peace with the expanding American settlements. That peace ended in 1830. Andrew Jackson, now president, signed the Indian Removal Act. This law authorized the forced relocation of all native tribes east of the Mississippi River to Oklahoma Territory. The goal was to clear the southeast for white settlement and plantation expansion. The Seminoles were told to leave Florida, all of them, and that included the Black Seminoles. The Black Seminoles knew what removal meant. It meant being separated from their Seminole allies. It meant being vulnerable to slave catchers. It meant being sold back into slavery. Because under the removal treaties, there was a clause. Any black person living among the Seminoles who couldn't prove they were born free could be claimed as a runaway slave. And who decides if you were born free? The white commissioners overseeing the removal. The same white men who had financial incentives to declare black people as slaves. So the Black Seminoles said no, and the Seminoles backed them. In December 1835, a Seminole war leader named Osceola led an attack on American forces near Fort King. He killed the Indian agent who had been pushing for removal. Other Seminole and Black Seminole warriors ambushed a column of American soldiers, killing over 100 men. This was the beginning of the Second Seminole War. The Second Seminole War lasted 7 years, 1835 to 1842. It was the longest and most expensive war America fought before the Civil War. The U.S. military deployed over 30,000 troops. They built dozens of forts. They spent $40 million, which is over $1 billion in today's money. They lost 1,500 soldiers. And after all that, they still couldn't defeat the Seminoles and Black Seminoles. Why? Because the Black Seminoles were fighting for their lives. They knew every trail, every hiding spot, every water source in the Florida wilderness. They used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, hit and run attacks. They disappeared into swamps where American soldiers couldn't follow. They fought with a desperation and skill that shocked military commanders. General Thomas Jessup, who commanded U.S. forces during much of the war, wrote a letter to the Secretary of War. He said, "This, you may be assured, is a Negro war, not an Indian war." He meant that the real fighters, the ones driving the resistance, were the Black Seminoles, the ones who had the most to lose, the ones who knew that capture meant slavery or death. American forces tried everything. They used bloodhounds to track the fighters through the swamps. They offered bounties for captured Black Seminoles. They tried to bribe Seminole chiefs to betray their Black allies. They used trickery, inviting Seminole leaders to peace talks under a flag of truce and then arresting them. That's how they captured Osceola. They lied. They promised him safe passage to negotiate, and then they threw him in chains. He died in prison 3 months later. But even with trickery and overwhelming force, the Americans couldn't win. Eventually, they gave up trying to defeat the Seminoles militarily. Instead, they focused on exhaustion. They destroyed crops. They burned villages. They made it impossible for the Seminoles and Black Seminoles to survive in Florida. One by one, out of starvation and desperation, groups surrendered. Between 1835 and 1842, approximately 3,000 Seminoles and Black Seminoles were forcibly removed to Oklahoma. They were marched at gunpoint onto ships transported around Florida to the Gulf Coast, then forced to walk over 1,000 miles to Indian Territory. Many died on the journey. Children, elderly, sick people who couldn't keep up. The American soldiers didn't care. Keep moving or die on the trail. But here's the crucial part. Even in removal, the Black Seminoles were targeted for re-enslavement. Slave traders followed the removal caravans. They examined the black people being marched west. They claimed some as runaway slaves. They produced fake bills of sale. They bribed officials. Dozens, maybe hundreds of black Seminoles were pulled from the removal groups and sold into slavery. The ones who made it to Oklahoma faced constant danger. Creek Indians in Oklahoma, many of whom owned slaves themselves, tried to enslave the black Seminoles. They claimed that any black person on Creek land was their property. For years, there were legal battles and violence. Some black Seminoles fled Oklahoma entirely. They went to Mexico, where slavery was illegal. They went to the Bahamas. They went to Texas. Anywhere to escape the slavers. A few hundred Seminoles, and black Seminoles, never surrendered. They stayed in the Everglades. They hid in the swamps of southern Florida. They became the ancestors of the modern Seminole tribe of Florida and the Miccosukee tribe. To this day, the Seminoles call themselves the unconquered people, because technically, they never signed a peace treaty. They never surrendered. They just outlasted America's attempt to destroy them. The Second Seminole War cost America $40 million. 1,500 soldiers dead. 7 years of brutal fighting, all to remove the Seminoles and re-enslave the black Seminoles. Think about that cost. Think about the resources America was willing to spend just to prevent black people from living free. That's how important it was to preserve slavery. That's how terrified they were of free black communities. And this pattern wasn't unique to Florida. It happened everywhere. Everywhere black people tried to build something, they destroyed it. Fort Mose in Florida. 1738. The Spanish founded Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose, the first free black settlement in what would become the United States. It was a fortified town just north of St. Augustine. Black people who escaped slavery in the Carolinas and Georgia could find sanctuary there. They defended the town. They farmed. They lived as free citizens of Spanish Florida. The British hated it. When Britain took control of Florida in 1763, after the 7 Years' War, Fort Mose was abandoned. The free black residents fled to Cuba. The town was destroyed. The British made sure no trace remained. Stono Rebellion in South Carolina. 1739. Enslaved black people rebelled and tried to fight their way to Florida to Spanish territory, where they could be free. They armed themselves with weapons from a store. They marched south, recruiting other enslaved people along the way. The South Carolina militia hunted them down. They killed dozens. They beheaded the leaders and stuck their heads on pikes along the road as a warning. Any enslaved person who tries to fight for freedom will be mutilated and displayed like an animal. Gabriel's Rebellion in Virginia. 1800. An enslaved blacksmith named Gabriel Prosser planned a massive uprising. He recruited over 1,000 enslaved people. They planned to march on Richmond, take the capital, and demand freedom. The rebellion was betrayed before it could begin. Gabriel and 25 other leaders were hanged. Virginia passed new laws making it illegal to teach enslaved people to read, illegal for them to gather without white supervision, illegal for free. Black people to enter the state. Nat Turner's Rebellion in Virginia. 1831. Nat Turner led the most successful slave rebellion in American history. Over 70 enslaved people joined him. They killed about 60 white people over 2 days. The rebellion was crushed. Nat Turner and 16 others were executed. But the white retaliation was far worse. White mobs killed over 200 black people in Virginia, most of whom had nothing to do with the rebellion. They just killed black people indiscriminately out of rage and fear. And then, Virginia passed even harsher slave codes. Being black in Virginia became even more dangerous. Do you see the pattern? Now, every time black people resisted, every time they fought for freedom, every time they tried to escape or build something of their own, the response was overwhelming violence. Massacres, mass executions, legal crackdowns. The message was always the same. Stay enslaved. Stay quiet. Stay in your place, or we will kill you and everyone who looks like you. Negro Fort was part of this pattern. It was one link in a long chain of destroyed black communities. And the pattern didn't end with slavery. It continued after the Civil War, after emancipation, after Reconstruction, all the way into the 20th century. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898, the only successful coup d'etat in American history. Wilmington had a thriving black middle class. Black people owned businesses. They held political office. The city government was integrated. White supremacists couldn't tolerate it. On November 10, 1898, a white mob of over 2,000 men, armed with rifles and a Gatling gun, overthrew the city government. They burned the black newspaper office. They murdered between 60 and 300 black people. Exact numbers are unknown because they dumped bodies in the river. They forced all black elected officials to resign at gunpoint. They installed a white supremacist government, and the federal government did nothing. President McKinley refused to intervene. The coup succeeded. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. A prosperous black town. Black-owned homes, businesses, churches. On January 1, 1923, a white mob from neighboring towns attacked. They claimed a black man had assaulted a white woman. It was a lie. The woman had been beaten by her white lover and blamed a random black man to cover it up. But the mob didn't care about truth. Over 6 days, they burned Rosewood to the ground. They killed at least 6 black people, possibly dozens more. The entire black population fled into the swamps. They abandoned their property. The town ceased to exist. For 70 years, Florida didn't teach this history. It was erased. Only in the 1990s did the state officially acknowledge the massacre. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. The Greenwood District, known as Black Wall Street. The wealthiest black community in America. Black-owned banks, theaters, grocery stores, hotels, law offices, doctors' offices. Over 10,000 black residents. Many were millionaires. On May 31st and June 1st, 1921, a white mob attacked. They used guns, firebombs, and dynamite dropped from airplanes. Yes, airplanes. They firebombed a civilian neighborhood from the air. 35 city blocks burned. Over 1,200 homes destroyed. 300 black people murdered. 10,000 left homeless. And after the massacre, the city changed zoning laws to prevent rebuilding. Insurance companies refused to pay claims. Property deeds disappeared. The wealth was stolen. And for 75 years, Oklahoma schools didn't teach it. 3 generations grew up not knowing their state had committed genocide. Elaine, Arkansas, 1919. Black sharecroppers organized a union to demand fair pay. On September 30th, white mobs and federal troops attacked. They killed between 100 and 200 black people. They hunted them through the fields like animals. They shot them on sight. Afterward, they arrested black survivors and charged them with insurrection. 12 black men were sentenced to death. Not the white people who committed the massacre. The black people who survived it. Every single time black people built wealth, they destroyed it. Every single time black people organized, they crushed it. Every single time black people tried to live free and prosperous, America bombed them, burned them, shot them, and erased the evidence. Negro Fort in 1816. Tulsa in 1921. Rosewood in 1923. Over 100 years apart. Same pattern, same playbook, same result. Black communities destroyed. Black wealth stolen. Black lives erased from history. This wasn't accident. This was policy. This was America protecting white economic dominance. This was terrorism by design. And if you're wondering why your family doesn't own land, why black neighborhoods have no wealth, why the median white household has 10 times the wealth of the median black household, this is why. They stole it. They destroyed it. They made sure you could never build it back. But hold on, because what I'm about to show you next is even more disturbing. It's not just that they committed these massacres. It's how they covered them up. It's how they made sure you'd never learn this in school. It's how they buried an entire history of genocide and made you think your ancestors were just helpless victims who waited patiently for white people to grant them freedom. That's a lie. And the cover-up is still happening today. They didn't just destroy Negro Fort. They erased it from memory. They made sure that 200 years later, most Americans, most black Americans, would have no idea it ever existed. And they did this systematically, deliberately, using every tool at their disposal. Let's start with the physical evidence. After the explosion on July 27, 1816, what happened to the bodies? Nothing. There was no burial, no memorial, no attempt to identify the dead. Lieutenant Colonel Clinch's report mentions that the bodies were mutilated beyond recognition, that many were blown to atoms. The remains were left where they fell. Scavengers took care of the rest. Within weeks, there was nothing left but bones scattered in the ruins. The fort itself was demolished, not by the explosion alone, although that did most of the work. American forces systematically destroyed what remained. They didn't want any structure left standing that could become a rallying point or a memorial. By 1818, they had built Fort Gadsden on the exact same site. The new fort was named after James Gadsden, a white officer who later became famous for the Gadsden Purchase, the deal that gave America parts of Arizona and New Mexico. Gadsden's name replaced Negro Fort. The history was overwritten. For over a century and a half, there was no marker at the site, no plaque, no sign. Nothing to indicate that 270 people had been massacred there. Visitors to Fort Gadsden Historic Site, which is now a park managed by the U.S. Forest Service, would see information about the Seminole Wars and American military history. But nothing about Negro Fort, nothing about the explosion, nothing about the free black community that had lived there. Only in recent decades, thanks to the work of black historians and activists, has the site begun to acknowledge what really happened. Even now, the interpretation is sanitized. The word massacre is rarely used. The explosion is described as a military action. The victims are minimized. The emphasis is on American military success, not on the genocide that occurred. This is physical erasure. Destroy the evidence. Build over the site. Rename it. Ignore it for 200 years. By the time anyone asks questions, all the witnesses are dead, and the truth is buried under layers of official history. But physical erasure was just the beginning. The legal and political system worked overtime to justify and protect what happened. John Quincy Adams, Secretary of State in 1816, wrote an entire diplomatic memo defending the attack on Negro Fort. He sent it to the Spanish government to explain why American forces had invaded Spanish territory and killed Spanish residents, because technically, the people in Negro Fort were under Spanish protection. Adams argued that Spain had failed to control its territory. He said Negro Fort was a threat to American security because it harbored runaway slaves and hostile Indians. He called it a den of banditti, a nest of pirates. He said the explosion was regrettable but necessary. Adams later became President of the United States. The man who justified the Negro Fort massacre with legal language and diplomatic double talk was elected to the highest office in the land. No consequences, no accountability, just promotion. Andrew Jackson faced no consequences either. He had violated Spanish sovereignty. He had ordered an attack on a civilian settlement. He had caused the deaths of hundreds of people, most of them non-combatants. And what happened to him? He became governor of Florida, then president, then a legend. Old Hickory, the war hero, the founder of the Democratic Party, the champion of the common man, as long as that man was white. Jackson's presidential library in Tennessee celebrates his military victories. It mentions his campaigns against the Creeks and Seminoles. But it sanitizes the violence. It doesn't show you the letters where he calls for the destruction of Negro Fort. It doesn't tell you about the 270 people blown to pieces. It doesn't mention that survivors were re-enslaved. The library presents Jackson as a complex figure, a man of his time. What it really means is we're not going to talk about the genocide. And here's the legal precedent that came out of Negro Fort. After the massacre, no one was prosecuted. No inquiry was held. No military court-martial. The message was clear. The U.S. military can kill black people with impunity. It can invade foreign territory to hunt down freed slaves. It can massacre civilians, and no one will be held accountable. This precedent held for decades. During the Seminole Wars, American troops killed hundreds of black Seminoles. No prosecutions. During Reconstruction, white supremacist mobs massacred black voters. Rarely any prosecutions, and when there were all-white juries acquitted. During Jim Crow, thousands of black people were lynched. Almost no prosecutions. The pattern established at Negro Fort, that black lives can be taken without legal consequence, became the foundation of American racial violence for 2 centuries. Now let's talk about educational erasure. How many of you learned about Negro Fort in school? Raise your hand if your history textbook had even 1 sentence about it. I'm guessing almost none of you, because it's not there. It's not in the standard American history curriculum, not in high school, rarely in college, unless you take a specialized course on Black history or Florida history. I've looked at history textbooks used in schools across America. The standard narrative goes like this. Slavery existed. It was bad. The Civil War happened. Slavery ended. Reconstruction tried to help black people but failed. Jim Crow was unfortunate. The Civil Rights Movement fixed things. The end. That's the story most Americans learn. There's no mention of Negro Fort. No mention of the black Seminoles. No mention of the dozens of free black communities that existed before the Civil War and were systematically destroyed. No mention of the massacres that continued after the Civil War. The entire history of black resistance and white retaliation is erased. When the Seminole Wars are taught, they're framed as Indian wars, conflicts between the U.S. government and native tribes over land. The role of black Seminoles is barely mentioned, if at all. Students learn that Andrew Jackson was a tough military leader who secured Florida for America. They don't learn that he was hunting escaped slaves. They don't learn that the wars were partly about preserving slavery. This erasure is deliberate. Textbook companies, school boards, and state education departments decide what gets taught. And they've decided that the truth about American racial violence is too controversial, too uncomfortable, too likely to make white students feel bad or black students feel angry. So they leave it out. Florida, the state where Negro Fort was located, didn't teach about it for most of the 20th century. Even today, it's barely covered. The state standards mention the Seminole Wars, but don't require teaching about Negro Fort specifically. Teachers who want to cover it have to go out of their way. Use supplemental materials, risk complaints from parents or administrators who think they are being too political. And here's what's infuriating. The same states that refuse to teach about Negro Fort are now passing laws against teaching critical race theory. They're banning discussions of systemic racism. They're forbidding teachers from saying that America has a history of racial oppression. They're making it illegal to teach the truth, because the truth is dangerous. The truth makes people ask questions like, why doesn't my family have wealth? Why are black neighborhoods poor? Why is there a racial wealth gap? And when you start asking those questions, you start demanding reparations. You start demanding justice, and they can't allow that. So they bury the history. They erase Negro Fort and Tulsa and Rosewood and Wilmington and Elaine and all the other massacres. They teach a sanitized version where slavery was a long time ago. Racism is mostly over. And if black people would just work hard and stop complaining, everything would be fine. That narrative requires erasing the truth. It requires you not knowing about Negro Fort. The media played its part too. In 1816, American newspapers celebrated the destruction of Negro Fort. The Niles' Weekly Register, a widely read newspaper, reported the explosion with satisfaction. It called Negro Fort a receptacle for runaway slaves and said its destruction was a just and necessary measure. No sympathy for the dead, no mention of the women and children killed. Just celebration that a threat to slavery had been eliminated. For the next 200 years, mainstream media ignored Negro Fort. No documentaries, no news features, no books for popular audiences until very recently. The story was buried in academic journals, read only by specialists. The general public had no idea. Even today, when Negro Fort is mentioned, the language is sanitized. It's called the Battle of Negro Fort, not the massacre. Battle implies two armies fighting. This was a fort full of civilians blown up by military artillery. That's not a battle. That's a massacre. But calling it a massacre forces uncomfortable questions. So they call it a battle. They call it a military action. They make it sound like legitimate warfare instead of genocide. The same thing happened with other massacres. The Tulsa Race Massacre was called the Tulsa Race Riot for decades. Riot implies that black people were the aggressors. Riot implies chaos and lawlessness. Massacre is more accurate. A white mob systematically destroyed a black neighborhood. That's not a riot. That's a pogrom. But the media used riot because it blamed the victims. Rosewood was called the Rosewood Race Riot. Wilmington was called the Wilmington Race Riot. Over and over, the language was chosen to obscure who the aggressors were and who the victims were. And that language shaped public understanding. If it's a riot, then both sides were at fault. If it's a massacre, then one side committed genocide. The media chose riot. The media chose to protect the perpetrators. This matters because language shapes memory. If you call it the Battle of Negro Fort, people assume it was a military engagement. Soldiers fighting soldiers. If you call it the Negro Fort Massacre, people understand it was civilians being slaughtered. If you call Tulsa a riot, people think black people burned their own neighborhood. If you call it a massacre, people understand white people destroyed it. The media's choice of words is a form of historical erasure, and the erasure continues today. How often do you see Negro Fort mentioned in mainstream media? How often do documentaries about American history include it? How often do history podcasts cover it? Rarely. Almost never. Because it's controversial. Because it challenges the narrative that America is fundamentally good, that we've always been on the right side of history, that our military is a force for freedom and justice. Negro Fort proves the opposite. It proves that the U.S. military was used to enforce slavery. It proves that America committed genocide against free black people. It proves that the founding generation, the generation we're taught to revere, was willing to massacre civilians to preserve economic interests. That's too much truth for mainstream media to handle. So they ignore it. But the erasure goes even deeper. It's not just textbooks and media. It's the entire historical narrative we've been taught. The story of America that we learn in school is a story of progress. We started imperfect with slavery and inequality, but we've been getting better. We fought a civil war to end slavery. We passed civil rights laws to end segregation. We elected a black president. The arc of history bends toward justice. That narrative requires you to believe that the racism of the past was an aberration, a mistake that we've corrected. It requires you to believe that the system has fundamentally changed. And if you believe that, then you don't ask for reparations. You don't demand structural change. You just wait patiently for more progress. But Negro Fort destroys that narrative. Because Negro Fort proves that America didn't just tolerate slavery. America actively hunted down people who escaped slavery. America used military force to re-enslave them. America killed women and children to preserve the system. And America did this in 1816, 49 years after the Constitution was written, 40 years after George Washington became president. This wasn't the distant past. This was the early republic. This was the America that the founders built, and the pattern continued. Wilmington in 1898. Tulsa in 1921. These weren't ancient history. These were modern America, the 20th century, the era of progress and enlightenment. And yet America was still destroying black communities, still murdering black people, still stealing black wealth. If you know this history, you understand that the system hasn't fundamentally changed. You understand that the same forces that destroyed Negro Fort are still operating today. They just use different methods. Instead of cannonballs, they use gentrification. Instead of massacres, they use mass incarceration. Instead of slavery, they use prison labor. The system adapted. It didn't disappear, but they don't want you to know that. They want you to believe that racism is mostly in the past, that we've made so much progress, that things are so much better now. And to maintain that lie, they have to erase Negro Fort. They have to erase Tulsa and Rosewood and Wilmington and all the other evidence that the system was designed to destroy black freedom and prosperity. And it's still designed that way. This is why the cover-up matters. This is why educational erasure matters. This is why the sanitized language matters. Because as long as you don't know this history, you can't understand the present. You can't understand why the racial wealth gap exists. You can't understand why black neighborhoods are poor. You can't understand why police kill black people with impunity. You can't understand any of it because you don't know the history. And that ignorance is deliberate. That ignorance is the goal. They erased Negro Fort so you wouldn't ask questions, so you wouldn't demand reparations, so you wouldn't understand that your poverty isn't your fault, it was stolen from you. They erased it so you'd believe the lie that if you just work hard enough, you'll be fine. But your ancestors worked hard. They built Negro Fort. They built Black Wall Street. They built Rosewood. And every time they built something, America destroyed it and stole the wealth. That's the truth they've been hiding for 208 years. That's why Negro Fort matters. Not just because of what happened in 1816, but because the cover-up is still happening now. Because the lies you were taught in school are still being taught. Because the system that destroyed Negro Fort is still destroying black communities today. And now you know. Now you can see the pattern. Now you understand why things are the way they are. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to stay silent? Are you going to let them continue erasing your history? Or are you going to speak up? Are you going to demand the truth? Are you going to teach your children what they'll never learn in school? Because this isn't just about the past. This is about right now. And what happens next depends on you. Let's talk about right now. Let's talk about why Negro Fort matters in 2025. Because this isn't just history. This is a blueprint. The same system that bombed Negro Fort in 1816 is still operating today. It just wears different clothes. In 1816, Andrew Jackson used the U.S. military to destroy a free black community because it threatened the slave economy. He said it was about national security. He said it was about protecting American interests. What he meant was protecting white wealth, protecting the plantation system, protecting the ability of white people to own black people. In 2020, when George Floyd was murdered and millions of people protested in the streets, what happened? The National Guard was deployed. Military helicopters circled over cities. Police in riot gear attacked protesters with tear gas and rubber bullets. The president at the time said he would deploy active-duty military to dominate the streets. Dominate. That was the word he used. Why were they deployed? Not to protect black lives. George Floyd was already dead. Breonna Taylor was already dead. Ahmaud Arbery was already dead. The military and police weren't there to protect black people. They were there to protect property, to protect stores and businesses and the economic system. The same reason Jackson attacked Negro Fort. To protect the existing power structure, the military has always been used to suppress black freedom. Always. In 1816, it was used to re-enslave freed black people. During Reconstruction, federal troops were withdrawn from the South, allowing white supremacist militias to terrorize black voters and destroy black political power. During the Civil Rights Movement, the military was used to suppress protests. During the riots of the 1960s, troops occupied black neighborhoods like an occupying army. In Ferguson, in 2014, police with military equipment faced off against protesters. In Portland and Kenosha and Minneapolis. In 2020, the same thing happened. The DNA of the system hasn't changed. The military and police exist to protect property and power. When black people demand freedom, demand justice, demand what's owed to them, the response is always force. In 1816, it was a heated cannonball. In 2025, it's tear gas and mass arrests and surveillance. Different weapons, same mission. Keep black people controlled. And let's talk about police. Because police departments in America have their origins in slave patrols. In the South, before the Civil War, slave patrols were groups of white men authorized to stop any black person demand papers proving they weren't a runaway and use violence to enforce compliance. After slavery ended, those slave patrols became police departments. Same people, same mission. Control black bodies. When Garcon and the survivors of Negro Fort were captured, they were re-enslaved, sent back to plantations, forced to work without pay. Today, when black people are arrested, they go to prison. And in prison, they work for pennies an hour or for free, making products for corporations, producing goods that generate profit for everyone except them. The 13th Amendment, the one that supposedly ended slavery, has an exception. Slavery is legal as punishment for a crime. So they criminalized blackness. They passed laws that target black communities. They arrest black people at higher rates for the same crimes white people commit. They send them to prison. And then they enslave them legally. Mass incarceration is modern slavery. The prison industrial complex is the plantation system with a new name. And it's not an accident. It's not a series of unfortunate policy choices. It's by design. The same design that led to Negro Fort. Keep black people from building wealth. Keep them controlled. Keep them working for the benefit of white economic power. Let's talk about land and wealth. The people at Negro Fort built a community. They farmed land. They created something. And it was taken from them by force. That pattern repeated over and over. After the Civil War, during Reconstruction, black people were promised 40 acres and a mule. Land that had been worked by enslaved labor would be redistributed to the people who had worked it. That promise was broken. The land was given back to white plantation owners. Black people got nothing. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, black people bought land anyway. They scraped together money and purchased farms and built towns. And those were systematically taken, sometimes legally through discriminatory laws and tax policies, sometimes through violence like in Rosewood and Tulsa. Either way, the land was stolen. In the mid-20th century, black people moved to cities and built neighborhoods. They started businesses. They created wealth. And then came urban renewal. The government called it slum clearance. What it really was the destruction of black neighborhoods to build highways and developments that benefited white people. Black families were displaced. Black businesses were destroyed. The wealth was stolen again. Today it's called gentrification. Black neighborhoods that were neglected for decades suddenly become desirable. White developers buy property. Rents increase. Black families are forced out. The cycle repeats. The land is taken. The wealth is transferred. Black people are pushed to the margins. Do you see it? From Negro Fort in 1816 to gentrification in 2025, the pattern is the same. Black people build. White power structures destroy. Black wealth is stolen. Black people are displaced. Over and over and over for 200 years. And here's the thing. The wealth gap you see today isn't because black people don't work hard. It's not because black people make bad choices. It's because every time black people built wealth, it was destroyed. The median white household in America has about 10 times the wealth of the median black household. 10 times. That gap exists because of Negro Fort, because of Tulsa, because of Rosewood, because of redlining and urban renewal and mass incarceration, and all the other policies designed to extract wealth from black communities and transfer it to white ones. If Negro Fort hadn't been destroyed, if those families had been allowed to keep their land and build their community, their descendants would have inherited that wealth. If Black Wall Street hadn't been burned, if those businesses and properties had been passed down through generations, those families would be wealthy today. If Rosewood hadn't been erased, if those landowners had been able to stay and thrive, that wealth would exist now. But it was stolen. All of it. Trillions of dollars of wealth stolen over 200 years. And you're living with the consequences. This is why reparations aren't a handout. They're not charity. They're payment of a debt. America owes black people for stolen labor during slavery. But America also owes black people for stolen land, stolen businesses, stolen homes, stolen wealth in the centuries after slavery. The debt is real. The theft is documented. Negro Fort is one line item on a bill that's centuries long, and they don't want to pay. They don't want to acknowledge the debt. Because acknowledging it means acknowledging that the system is rigged. It means acknowledging that white wealth in America was built on black suffering and black stolen labor and black stolen property. It means the entire American success story is a lie, so they erase the history. They don't teach you about Negro Fort. They don't teach you about the systematic destruction of black wealth. They teach you that America is a meritocracy, that hard work pays off, that anyone can make it if they try. And when black communities are poor, they blame black people. They say it's a culture problem. They say it's about personal responsibility. They never mention that the government bombed your ancestors and stole their land. But now you know. Now you know why your family doesn't own property. Now you know why black neighborhoods lack resources. Now you know why the wealth gap exists. It's not your fault. It's not your ancestors' fault. It was stolen. It was taken by force. And the people who took it built generational wealth on top of that theft. White families today are wealthy because their ancestors stole from your ancestors. That's not an opinion. That's documented historical fact. So when someone tells you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, when someone says slavery was a long time ago and you should just move on, when someone says reparations are too expensive or unfair, you tell them about Negro Fort. You tell them about 270 people blown to pieces for the crime of being free. You tell them about the systematic destruction of black wealth for 2 centuries. You tell them the debt is real and it's owed, and you're not going away until it's paid. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice. This is about restoring what was stolen. This is about breaking the cycle that started at Negro Fort and continues today. Because as long as the theft is buried, as long as the history is erased, the system continues. But when you know the truth, when you speak the truth, when you demand justice based on the truth, everything changes. Your ancestors at Negro Fort didn't die for nothing. They died because they refused to be enslaved. They died free. They died fighting. And their story, the story they tried to erase, is your inheritance. Not wealth, not property, but the knowledge of what was taken and the righteous anger to demand it back. That's why this matters now. That's why Negro Fort isn't just history. It's ammunition. It's proof. It's the answer to every lie they told you about why things are the way they are. And now that you know, you can't unknow it. Now that you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You are not victims. Let me say that again. You are not victims. You are descendants of people who built a fortress and said no to slavery. You are descendants of people who armed themselves with British weapons and defended their families. You are descendants of Garçon, who looked at American forces surrounding him and chose death over chains. You are descendants of the Black Seminoles, who fought 3 wars against the U.S. military and never surrendered. Your ancestors were warriors, not in the sense of being violent, but in the sense of being willing to fight for freedom, willing to die for freedom, willing to sacrifice everything rather than live in bondage. That spirit is in your DNA. That courage is in your blood. That determination is your inheritance. They tried to break that spirit. They tried to make you forget. They tried to teach you that your ancestors were helpless, that they suffered quietly, that they waited patiently for white people to grant them freedom. That's a lie. Your ancestors fought. They resisted. They built. And every time they were knocked down, they got back up and built again. Think about the strength that takes. Think about the faith that requires. Your ancestors survived the Middle Passage. They survived slavery. They survived Negro Fort. They survived the Seminole Wars. They survived Jim Crow. They survived lynching and massacres and systematic oppression for 400 years. And you're here. You're alive. That's not an accident. That's not luck. That's divine purpose. God preserved you for a reason. God brought your ancestors through fire and water and blood for a reason. And that reason is this moment, this knowledge, this awakening. You are here right now learning the truth they tried to bury because God has a mission for you. To tell the truth, to demand justice, to rebuild what they destroyed, to reclaim what they stole. You are not poor because you failed. You are poor because they stole your inheritance. Your ancestors were building wealth at Negro Fort. They were farming land. They had weapons and property and community. If that had been allowed to continue, if that hadn't been destroyed, you would be wealthy today. Your poverty is not a reflection of your worth or your ancestors' worth. Your poverty is theft, and theft can be repaid. You are not powerless because you're weak. You are powerless because the system was designed to keep you powerless. Every time black people gained power, the system crushed it. Wilmington had a black government. They overthrew it. Tulsa had black wealth. They burned it. Negro Fort had black freedom. They bombed it. The system works. It does what it was designed to do. But systems can be changed. Systems can be overthrown. Systems can be replaced. You are not alone. Your ancestors stood together at Negro Fort, black and native side by side. They understood that their freedom was connected. They understood that unity was strength. Today you stand with millions of black people who are waking up to this truth. Millions who are learning their history. Millions who are demanding justice. You are part of a movement that spans centuries. From the people at Negro Fort to the people in the streets today, the struggle continues. And you are part of it. You carry the spirit of warriors. Garcon standing on the wall refusing to surrender. The Black Seminoles disappearing into the Everglades and fighting for 7 years. The survivors of Tulsa rebuilding their lives after losing everything. The civil rights activists facing dogs and fire hoses. The protesters today facing tear gas and rubber bullets. That same spirit lives in you. They couldn't kill it at Negro Fort. They couldn't kill it in the Everglades. They couldn't kill it in Birmingham or Selma or Ferguson. And they can't kill it now. Your mission is to keep that spirit alive, to learn your history, to teach your children, to demand what's owed, to build what they tried to destroy, to refuse to be erased. They want you to forget Negro Fort. Don't forget. They want you to accept the wealth gap as natural. Don't accept it. They want you to believe the system will eventually get better if you just wait. Don't wait. They want you to be quiet and grateful for the progress that's been made. Don't be quiet. Be loud. Be angry. Be demanding. Be like Garcon. Choose freedom or death. Nothing in between. God didn't bring you through 400 years of hell so you could be comfortable. God brought you through so you could be dangerous. Dangerous with truth. Dangerous with knowledge. Dangerous with righteous anger. Dangerous with demands for justice. Your ancestors armed themselves with rifles. You arm yourself with history. You arm yourself with facts. You arm yourself with the undeniable truth that America owes you a debt, and that debt must be paid. You are descendants of people who built fortresses. You are descendants of people who said no to the most powerful military in the world. You are descendants of people who chose honorable death over dishonorable survival. You are descendants of survivors. You are descendants of fighters. You are descendants of warriors, and you are still here. Still standing, still building, still fighting. They bombed you, and you're still here. They enslaved you, and you're still here. They lynched you, and you're still here. They stole from you, and you're still here. You are the proof that they failed. You are the evidence that they couldn't break you. You are the living testimony that black people cannot be destroyed. So walk in that truth. Walk in the knowledge of who you are and where you come from. Walk in the power of your ancestors' sacrifice. Walk in the certainty that justice is owed and justice will come. Walk like Garcon walked to those walls, knowing he might die, but refusing to surrender. Walk like the Black Seminoles walked into the Everglades, knowing the path was hard, but the destination was freedom. Walk like your grandmother walked through Jim Crow, knowing the system was rigged, but walking with dignity anyway. You are not victims. You are warriors. You are not helpless. You are powerful. You are not forgotten. You are remembered. Negro Fort remembers you. Garcon remembers you. Your ancestors remember you. And now you remember them. This is your inheritance. Not money, not land, but memory, truth, purpose, the knowledge that you come from people who could not be broken, and the responsibility to honor them by continuing the fight. They tried to erase your history. You bring it back to light. They tried to steal your wealth. You demand reparations. They tried to destroy your community. You rebuild it. They tried to make you forget. You remember. You teach. You refuse to let them win. This is what it means to be a descendant of Negro Fort. This is what it means to carry the legacy of resistance. This is what it means to be Black in America. Not a victim, a warrior, not helpless, powerful, not erased, alive and awake and angry and demanding and unstoppable. Now act like it. If you made it this far, you need to do something right now. This isn't just a video you watch and forget. This is a mission, and I need you to join it. First, subscribe to this channel. Click that button right now. Because Negro Fort is just one story. There are hundreds more. There's the story of the all-black town that fought off the KKK and won. There's the story of the black scientists whose inventions were stolen and credited to white people. There's the story of the Black Wall Street millionaires murdered in Tulsa. There's the story of Ida B. Wells with a rifle and a pen documenting 5,000 lynchings. All of these stories have been erased, and I'm bringing them all back. If you don't subscribe, you'll miss them. And these stories are too important to miss. These are your stories. This is your history. This is the truth they don't want you to know. So subscribe. Right now. Don't wait. Second, share this video. I'm serious. Share it with 5 people today. Share it with your cousin who doesn't know Black history. Share it with your children who need to learn where they come from. Share it with your church members who need to know their ancestors were warriors, not victims. Share it with your co-workers. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Get this truth out there, because schools won't teach this. The news won't cover this. The system that erased Negro Fort for 200 years isn't suddenly going to resurrect it. You have to do it. You have to be the one who keeps this story alive. If you don't share it, it stays buried. If you share it, it spreads. One person tells 5 people. Those 5 tell 5 more. That's how movements start. That's how truth spreads. That's how we win. Third comment below. Type, "I remember," if you commit to never forgetting this story. Type, "Garkin," if you respect a man who chose death over slavery. Type, "Negro Fort," if you're angry they erased this from history. Type, "Reparations," if you understand that America owes a debt. Your comment does 2 things. It tells me you're paying attention, and it pushes this video to more people. YouTube's algorithm buries truth, but if enough people like and comment, the algorithm has to show it. So comment. Right now. Fourth, teach your children. Tonight, sit them down. Tell them about Negro Fort. Tell them about Garson. Tell them about the 270 people who were blown up for being free. Tell them about the Black Seminoles who fought 3 wars and never surrendered. Tell them they come from warriors. Tell them their poverty is not their fault, it was stolen. Tell them the system is rigged, but they are strong enough to fight it. Because if you don't teach them, the schools won't. The schools will teach them the sanitized version. Slavery happened. It ended. Everything's fine now. That's a lie. Teach them the truth. Teach them that their ancestors fought back. Teach them that resistance is their inheritance. Teach them to be like Garçon. Teach them to refuse chains. Teach them to demand justice. Fifth, demand reparations. This isn't radical. This isn't asking for a handout. This is demanding payment of a debt. America stole trillions of dollars of wealth from Black people over 400 years. That debt is owed. Negro Fort is one line item. Tulsa is another. Rosewood, Wilmington, Elaine, slavery. convict leasing, redlining, urban renewal, mass incarceration. The list goes on and on. The debt is real. The debt is documented. The debt must be paid. Talk about reparations. Organize around reparations. Vote for candidates who support reparations. Demand that your church, your organization, your community leaders take a stand on reparations. Don't let anyone tell you it's too expensive, or it's not feasible, or it's divisive. The theft was real. The payment is owed. Period. This is not just information. This is ammunition. Every fact I gave you, every date, every name, every number, is a weapon. Use it. When someone says slavery was a long time ago, tell them about Negro Fort in 1816. When someone says black people should just work harder, tell them about Black Wall Street burned in 1921. When someone says reparations are unreasonable, tell them about trillions of dollars of stolen wealth. Use this knowledge. Fight with it. Your ancestors built a fortress and said no. You build a movement and say no. No to erasure. No to lies. No to injustice. No to accepting poverty as your fault. No to waiting for the system to fix itself. No to silence. Just no. Like Garcon said, no. Like the Black Seminoles said no. Like every warrior who came before you said no. Are you in? Prove it. Subscribe, share, comment, teach, demand, act. Now, bow your heads with me. Father God, we come before you today with heavy hearts and burning souls. We thank you for preserving the memory of the 270 souls who died at Negro Fort on July 27, 1816. We speak their names into eternity, even though history tried to erase them. We thank you for Garcon the warrior who refused to surrender. We thank you for his wife, who was murdered but not forgotten. We thank you for the mothers who shielded their children in the explosion. We thank you for the men who chose death over chains. We thank you for the 30 who survived and carried this story forward through the generations. Lord, we thank you for the Black Seminoles who escaped into the Everglades, who fought 3 wars, who never went back to slavery. Thank you for their resistance. Thank you for their refusal to accept bondage. Thank you for their strength that flows through the veins of their descendants today. We pray for justice for Negro Fort. For 208 years, America has owed a debt of acknowledgement, a debt of reparations, a debt of truth-telling. We pray that debt will be paid. We pray that every person watching this video will become a keeper of this truth. Give them courage to share it. Give them boldness to teach their children. Give them determination to demand what is owed. We pray for the exposure of every covered-up massacre, every erased community, every buried story. Let truth flood this nation like a river that cannot be stopped. Let justice flow like a mighty stream that cannot be dammed. Let the lies be washed away. Let the light shine on every dark corner of American history. Bless those who fight for reparations. Strengthen those who resist modern re-enslavement through mass incarceration. Vindicate the memory of our ancestors who were killed for being free. And give us the spirit of Garcon, the spirit that says, I would rather die free than live in chains. The spirit that says, blow up the fort before you surrender. The spirit that terrified Andrew Jackson and still terrifies white supremacy today. Make us dangerous with truth. Make us unstoppable in pursuit of justice. Make us warriors worthy of the ancestors who died at Negro Fort. We pray for our children. Protect them from the lies they'll be taught in school. Give them teachers who tell the truth. Give them the courage to question the narrative. Give them the strength to carry this history forward. Let them know they come from warriors, not victims. We pray for healing, for the trauma that has been passed down through generations, for the wealth that was stolen, for the communities that were destroyed, for the lives that were taken. We cannot change the past, but we can demand justice in the present. We can build in the future. We can honor our ancestors by refusing to forget. Lord, you said the truth will set us free. We claim that promise today. We claim freedom from the lies, freedom from the erasure, freedom from the shame they tried to put on us. We are not victims. We are survivors of genocide. We are descendants of warriors. We are heirs to stolen empires. Our poverty is not our fault. It was stolen, and we demand it back. Make us bold. Make us brave. Make us loud. Make us relentless. In the name of Jesus, who came to set the captives free, who came to bring good news to the poor, who came to proclaim liberty to those who are oppressed. We claim that liberty. We walk in that freedom. We demand that justice. In Jesus' name, who knew what it meant to be executed by an empire, who knew what it meant to be erased and then resurrected, we pray. Amen. Walk in truth. Demand justice. Remember Negro Fort. You are free. You are powerful. You are descended from warriors who could not be broken. Your ancestors built a fortress and armed themselves and said no to slavery. You build a movement and arm yourself with truth and say no to injustice. You are the continuation of their fight. You are the answer to their prayers. You are the reason they survived. Don't let them erase you. Don't let them silence you. Don't let them steal from you again. You know the truth now. You know what happened at Negro Fort. You know the pattern. You know the debt that's owed. So speak, teach, demand, fight. Not with violence, with truth, with knowledge, with the irrefutable facts of history, with the righteous anger of people who have been lied to for too long. Until next time, know your history. Teach your children. Demand reparations. Build what they tried to destroy. Stay dangerous with truth. Stay powerful with knowledge. Stay committed to justice. God bless you. You are warriors. You are survivors. You are free. Remember Negro Fort. Remember Garçon. Remember the 270. Remember your ancestors. Remember who you are.